last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. My name is Adrian Hernandez. I am here today with Ezra Parter, Evan Liu, Jackie K, and I think Brendan will be joining us. We are all kind of gathering as we speak here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please head on over to the website, milehighhockey.com. If you enjoy this programming, you will get a lot more Avs content in written form over there and otherwise. So thank you. We appreciate you. Happy Friday to everyone. Ezra, Jackie, Evan, thank you all. This is going to be a little bit more of a free form episode today because so much has happened recently for the Avalanche, and we definitely did our quick reaction to the Mikko Rantanen trade. But I want to get a little bit more in depth and kind of see how we feel now that the dust has settled slightly, but not all the way. I do also want to touch on the new guys, Jack Drury and Necas, and kind of how they're fitting in. I want to talk about an interesting buyout and if there's any potential for the Avalanche to play ball with Brandon Saad. Just a quick hint, I'm not interested, but we'll talk about that. And then we will wrap up with bold predictions and see if the three of you have anything I haven't touched on that you do want to talk about. So that's kind of what we'll get into today. Let's start with the meat on the dish, which is Mikko Rantanen and that deal that brought over Martin Necas and Jack Drury. Now, there's a lot that's been said already about this trade here and otherwise, so we won't spend any time kind of breaking down the ins and outs of it. What I'm really interested in today, and I'll start with you, Evan, is kind of a question that I keyed on in our reaction that you brought to the table that I really, really liked, which was, how does this affect Mikko Rantanen's legacy in Colorado? And I want to double down on that question and ask you, now that you've seen his outward and open reaction to the trade, are you as surprised as he is that it happened?
Yes, that's such an easy answer.
Yes.
I mean, I'll admit I have been sort of out of the Avalanche world for the last week. It's just been a mad week for me. So kind of thinking about it now, almost a week later, just kind of reflecting on this is just man, we're the Avalanche, I guess we're all three parties involved. We're the Avalanche, Mikko Rantanen, and more specifically, I think his agent, that far off of a deal that they thought they couldn't get anything done in the next 6 months to make it work, right? That's the thing that I feel like is just so shocking to me. I think that's what's shocking to Mikko Rantanen. That's what's shocking to Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. Everyone's kind of said the same, something along those lines, right? So, and I mean, Chris McFarland even said in his presser, after the trade was made, was, it's disappointing, and it's it's a business at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. So, I guess if you want to like lay blame on someone, I guess I feel like it has to go on the agent, because you have to recognize this agent. I don't know his name. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's also the one that represents Leon Draisaitl, and Draisaitl just got $14 million, and that's the one that Mikko Rantanen had kind of been eyeing, right? Whether he was personally eyeing it or his agent was eyeing it because it meant a bigger payout for him, who knows, right? So it's just crazy. I don't know if it will ever set in, I guess, until maybe the off season, or maybe even next season by the time it rolls around and we've seen a year without Mikko Rantanen on the Avalanche. But still just kind of shocked.
I'm with you on the agent stuff, and I actually want to send this one over to Ezra, because Ezra, you were kind of on top of that like early on. In fact, before the season started, you brought up the fact that the representation from Mikko Rantanen was that the same of Leon Draisaitl and the $14 million. And we kind of heard that figure thrown about before all of this kind of went down. A lot of us Avs pundits kind of explained it away by saying, oh yeah, well, the Avs have the 8th year. You can do the math the same, yada, yada, yada. It feels like that really is in the ballpark in terms of at least what Mikko Rantanen's representation was looking for. Two-parter for you. Are you as surprised as Mikko's representation? And does this feel like almost like a posturing by Avs management to you?
Okay, well, I'm definitely surprised. It's still a shocking move. As much as I feel like I've been able to like rationalize around it and see the positives, I'm still in shock. I don't hate it as much as I did in the moment, but I'm still in shock. But as far as it goes, as posturing goes, I don't think so. I think they set a firm number. I recommend reading AJ's story on DNVR about this, because AJ went into detail with his background reporting from solid sources that wouldn't give him a quote, but clearly gave him the information that like the process was pretty straightforward. Every step of the way, management went to Rantanen and said, hey, here's the numbers where we're at. We'd like to make this work. And Rantanen's team wanted more money, whether that's Mikko or the agent or a combination of both. It's hard to know. In that article, AJ speculated, or maybe it was reporting, it's unclear because there wasn't a quote, but that maybe the situation was that the agent was giving Mikko the idea that there's no way they could trade him, so he should hardball and hold out for a little bit more money. And Chris McFarland said, no, seriously, we're going to do this. And then they were like, yeah, right. And seriously, they did it. So, yeah. It seems like whether Mikko didn't take McFarland at face value or the agent convinced Mikko not to listen, it seems like the Avs laid out their position pretty clearly. And Rantanen's camp decided to go for the money, which they're entitled to do. I can't fault him for it, but sure sucks.
Yeah, well, I guess
I didn't know that. Sorry, I've seen that people raving about that AJ article. Sorry, DNVR guys.
I have a few thoughts on it.
Cheap
myself.
But it's intriguing to hear that.
I am interested in the fact though that like if that's true, that's going to look really bad on an agent that was doing very well for his players up until this moment, because unless he just goes to the open market and gets the $14 million anyway.
I think that is going to happen. He's going to get the money.
I have a hard time believing that there isn't still a part of Mikko Rantanen that wants to be teammates with Nathan McKinnon. I think what's on the chest, he might feel a type of way now about that. But I think his teammates, he probably still has a connection with, and probably deep down is like, man, that was a lot of fun, and I wish I was still doing that. I think that there's some of and people all over the internet started. I mean, I get it, Mikko Rantanen's an asset, but he's not property. I had people telling me, well, if you have a piece of property that's gonna possibly lose value altogether, you have to exchange it. And I'm like, well, first of all, houses don't have feelings. Houses don't have desires. So that's kind of where this, to me, like people are going a little crazy with everything. But I'll say this, maybe posturing was the wrong word, but I do think they set a precedent in the very nature of the context that you described, which is, hey, if you're going to play hardball, we're the ones that extend the contract and can move it at any time. And so I think that they called his bluff if that was indeed the situation. Brennan, the night of the happening, so to speak, you said, quote unquote, you can't blame Mikko. Do you still feel like that today? And Jackie, I'm saving you for last because I want you to have a lot of time, just so you know.
Okay, I have a few thoughts.
I know you do.
Well, I mean, I still feel that way because, essentially he's going to want the money, and he still hasn't signed. And usually when, some extension has been set up beforehand in a trade situation, like with the agent, like a handshake deal or something.
Right.
Signed right away by the player. And his agent is Andy Scott, by the way. But he's still not signing. We're talking, this is a guy who's got Patrick Laine, Draisaitl, Velarde. Who else is on there? Wyatt Johnston. Oh, he's got Ty Felber.
So he's got quite a few.
And Calvin DeHaan.
Well, I guess that means Ty Felber's holding out for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jackie, I'm curious. I wrote an article this weekend or this week because I felt like there was a part of this story that at least maybe won't get touched on as much because there is a little bit of affinity among Avs media. And I get that. I mean, even in the press releases we got, it was like, talk about this and don't really touch on. We didn't really even get fed information to talk bad, I guess, which makes sense. But at the same time, I do want to look at this trade in a way where we actually analyze it in terms of like how management did in acquiring assets for Mikko Rantanen. I've reserved myself to the fact that this trade had to happen because I just need to live in that world so that I can survive. But now that we're there, my question was, and my opinion is, I feel like Mikko should at a minimum have returned a first rounder among some of the other assets to include Necas. I know there's some give and take there based on the value of the other assets, but what are your thoughts on that opinion, and what are your thoughts overall on what we've talked about so far?
To me now? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with that. I think if you have the leverage in the situation, like the best rentals at the deadline, I'll go for firsts. So I think that would have been a fair ask in the situation. Plus, I said before that Carolina has a lot of good prospects. I don't think the difference in value between Rantanen and Necas is Drury and a second-round pick. Not to say that those things don't have value, but yeah, I agree with you. And it kind of depends who has leverage in the situation. Like we know in the Blackwood deal, the Avs were not the ones with leverage. But if you look at this deal, you can make an argument the Avs had the best asset. Should they have had the leverage? As far as the other things, I don't. Okay, so the whole that they were at a take it or leave it stage, I think that's all spin. They had over a month to the trade deadline. They had 5 months to the actual deadline. And what Mikko said is, I didn't know we were in a rush. Who knew they were in a rush? Like a week ago today, did we know we were in a rush? No. So, and I think we're missing the point of how secretive this was. To Brennan's point, he hasn't signed yet. This was not a sign and trade. This was not where Carolina had the rights to speak to him. The Avs only negotiated with, was mentioned, a couple teams. Outside of that, Chicago didn't even know the player they were retaining on. So I don't think this was it was completely secret. So I don't think this was this is our best offer. You're either going to take it or we're going to trade you. That was never communicated. That So, maybe it's a lesson in anybody can get traded, but he had trade protection. He had a 9-team no trade clause, and since Carolina wasn't on that, they didn't even have to approach him about that. So this is why I don't believe the whole they called his bluff or whatever. Like, what bluff? It's a negotiation. We see this year after year with high profile players. Yeah, it's a grind. It's a lot of back and forth. It's a long, hard negotiation, and it takes time. Was he going to present his best number in January? Was he expecting the Avs to present their best number in January? Who was expecting that?
Right.
So
it's like buying a car, right?
Yes, or anything, buying a house, any negotiation.
And if that's our analogy, if you're buying a car and you go in and you're like, I have $18,000 to spend, and they're like, this car costs $36,000, then you're like, okay, this isn't going to work. And I'm not saying those are the numbers, but obviously because they don't compare. But if that is the situation where the Avs management is like, there's no way that we get close enough, then they get
then they're fair to make that decision. I have a few other points here.
Yes,
if we're going to talk about the things that AJ raised, that they were at the Pasternak and the Panarin comparables, that was in yesterday's dollars, in cap dollars of a $94 million cap upcoming. And that doesn't even include any other increases that's possible. 94 is like the minimum. So this whole thing is thrown around like this 14 million is just because he said, oh, Draisaitl got 14 million, I'm as good as him. No, it has to do with the cap going up. Like, people want to equate it with Draisaitl. I equate it with the news that the cap is going up. I mean, they're not even having the players pay escrow for the second half of the season. Like, it's going to happen. So if you look at the comparables, if you look at the cap percentage, which is something I've talked about for a long time, which is certainly what the agents are going to be discussing, is what Pasternak signed for in the terms of $94 million is 12.66. And what Panarin signed for in the terms of $94 million is 13.43. So if those are his comparables that the Avs were themselves saying, those are what their figures are in today's dollars. It has nothing to do with Draisaitl.
Yeah.
And if I could just kind of wrap up this entire thing, because kind of going off of Jackie's point of like, yes, the cap is going up. That gives you even more reason to try and sign him even more and at least get to a little bit more of a middle ground compared to this rumored, I guess, 11.75 million and 14 million. You can find something in between there. You have the leverage. You had the extra year that you could provide, which in turn means then that you get less money a year, but you're still making the same amount, throughout that time. So I think really what this is, and I said it in my own kind of reaction piece, I guess, after the fact. But like, this is just like a franchise altering move, not just now, but for the next, decade, maybe more than that. Right. And it's just crazy to think about that. Cause like, we know the Avs have been cheap before, right? You saw that with Georgiev and Anunin. That didn't work out very well, did it? Right. Now you have two completely new netminders. If you're not going to pay your guys, then you're going to get what you pay for. That's just simply put. So,
and Necas isn't going to be cheap either. That hasn't been discussed at all.
Especially if he scores 100 points and 50 goals, like everyone says he's gonna.
Or ends up top 10 in scoring. It's like, there was a reason why Carolina had issues signing him long term. Their third best player is still going to be a wing and still going to be paid a lot, and they're still going to be top heavy.
But let's think about this though, Jackie, because to me, this conversation leads me to wonder, and this is all speculation, but I'm connecting dots that I feel are firmly in sight, which is that this might be timing-wise a more premeditated thing than we realize. We've talked already this season about how the Avs and Chris MacFarland in particular are a little more keen and quick to move on from guys that aren't a fit. We've talked about how Mikko Rantanen and Casey Middlestat are similar in their cerebral tendencies and kind of their faults defensively. We've talked about how the Avs work best when they can run and gun. Well, this feels like Necas on the surface, at least stylistically, is a fit for what the Avalanche are trying to do. And Mikko Rantanen, although successful within the system, some of the numbers you look at away from McKinnon are interesting. Some of the numbers you look at now that he's not with McKinnon, I know it's early. There's been 2 or 3, I think 2 games. But it's already clearly had an effect on him, which it would anyone, just on a human level. But, I mean, Marty Necas and Jack Drury are flying around for the Avalanche in comparison right now. And I think what it feels like to me is, Evan, you're 100% correct. This was a huge franchise-changing step. And I don't think it was herky-jerky. I think it was a lot more foreseen than we realized, and that's why it was surprising. Because the Avs had already maybe had a foregone conclusion that they were going to pivot this way, and we're kind of just waiting until they got the right deal and the right return to pull the trigger. I still argue that you could have waited till the deadline and had more offers on the table to sift through. But if they had their eyes on Marty Necas and Drury in particular, I can see how this comes to fruition in this timing. Brennan, you had some faces for me. What do you got?
Herky jerky.
Oh, yeah.
I think the last thing that I want to say about this, and then I'll shut up about it because we got other things to talk about.
Sure.
The fever dream is that somehow Rantanen realizes how much worse it is in Carolina and decides to take a team-friendly deal back in Colorado. But I don't see that happening. And I also really, 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 really hope that they do not do this with Cale Makar in a few years down the line. Because that would be awful.
You can't.
It's not even a few years. Like his clock starts
27.
ticking this summer.
Yeah. Well,
to me, and I know I was one of the people saying there's no way Rantanen moves, so take this with whatever grain of salt you want. But to me, this is a move made with keeping Cale in mind.
Totally.
Like they decided they didn't have the money for all 3 of these top 3 in the league contracts, and made the move to move on from the winger and keep the center and the defenseman, which literally every team would do. Whether you agree with the fact that they can't pay for all 3, that's I think where the conversation is. But I don't see this happening to Cale.
Cale's going to be a UFA 27-28.
Yeah.
I think
I don't think anybody thinks he's moving.
No, but nobody thought Rantanen was moving. So,
but
I mean, then they have.
You guys saw me my reaction right away, but like. And maybe this is cognitive dissonance. Maybe this is what coping is. But like, I really am looking at the situation in a different light right now, which is I think that Mikko's agent might have dropped the ball if, in fact, Mikko didn't want to leave. If that's true, then I think his agent screwed up because I do think there was some lack of communication from that end where they were probably trying to play hardball. If we're getting reports of $14 million from respected pundits, that's probably what was happening. And I think it's reasonable to be concerned about how Mikko was represented in terms of wanting to stay. I also, on the flip side of things, think it's reasonable to wonder if the Avs had this maybe in mind sooner than we realized. Jackie, what do you think?
Well, they should have been planning for it for years. I mean, this isn't something you just decide in January. And maybe they kind of were hedging on it because they knew that they were only going to go up to a certain number. I mean, this all has to do with leverage. I've been saying for a year, what are the Avs gaining by waiting? They're going to have no leverage in this situation. And that's kind of why I think they panicked. Maybe they saw it coming. Maybe they knew that if they weren't getting any traction, then they were going to have to do this because they can't let it go further as their leverage completely slips away.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that it happened now is, what was your original question? Let's go back to that. What were you asking me?
I believe I asked you, well, you're asking me to recall, and man,
Okay.
I don't know if I'm capable. I'm moving on to the next question in my brain already. So, well,
What were they planning for? Okay, I guess
had
that's
they
the point I wanted to make.
no,
don't think it should have been some. If you decide we can't be top heavy, we can't pay 3 players as much. This is something you plan for. That's something that you look towards what you can develop. You can look towards what you can put in those roles. Usually when teams move a big piece like that, you have somebody that's ready that can kind of take on a bigger role. Now, obviously getting Necas back is part of that, but you can't, if you're deciding we're not a top heavy team and we're going to be a team that runs on depth, you have to be ready for that. You have to prepare, you have to have your team, you have to have your depth, your players, everything. And like I said, they're going to have to pay Necas a decent amount of money. So they're going to be pretty close to back in the same situation where you're paying 3 players a lot of money. Your third highest paid player is going to be a wing. It's the same thing. So I don't think that they've monumentally changed how this team operates because they're going to be back in pretty much the same situation.
Oh, and the depth part just makes me so that's a whole other conversation that'll get me riled up.
Well, I dang near lost my mind when Chris McFarland tried to hit us with we're going to make up for it in the aggregate, as if the Avs don't get to come to the table with as many dollars as everyone else. I was like, you can't just do that and think that is a satisfactory answer. I understand that it's a concept, but I don't think it applies. And I thought that was crazy. I do know, I will say this. I want to talk about the guys that the Avs have acquired now. I want to talk about Marty Necas, what we've seen so far, what we've liked, maybe what we might be concerned about. Jack Drury as well, who I'll just start by saying this. He's going to be an RFA, and he looks pretty good right now, so that's nice. I love me some RFAs in a trade. But let's go with you, Evan, to start. What have you seen from Marty Necas? What are you looking for in the future from him as well?
I mean, I've been stuck to the radio and got the last 10 minutes of the Isles game. I watched that this whole last weekend. But I mean, Necas has sounded good, at least. Shout out Connor McGahey for helping me out with that one. I know we hit a couple of posts on a power play in New York. I mean, I have his stats pulled up here. 4 points in 3 games for Colorado, which not bad, right? I feel like that's not a bad start whatsoever. And if what he's offering in terms of his speed and his entry, that's always something that Colorado has kind of struggled with, especially on the power play. And I think at least hearing about it anyway on the radio was that their power play looked a whole lot better in New York against the Rangers. So I'll take that for sure, 100%. As for Drury, the comment that McFarland made of we think he's a future 3C, I laughed at that. I like him, but I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know about
he's
that.
He's a 3C the way Middlestat's been a 2C.
That's my thought there exactly. But again, he also has 2 goals in 2 straight games. So I mean, not bad, all things considered, right? Granted, of course, they're only 3 games into their Avalanche tenure. But if they can at least put something together, they'll get some time at home now. They'll get some practices in. Hopefully they'll get rolling a little bit more now, and it'll make me feel a little bit better about the return on the trade than I do now.
Jackie, Evan brings up the power play and how it had a little bit different of a look or listen, according to Evan, as he was watching or listening to Connor McGahey. Did you feel the same way? I did like some of the movement that I saw on the power play in New York.
Well, they put Necas on the left side, right?
Yeah, they basically had Mikko, no, they kind of had him and Nate in the same area, and then they would cycle in and out of that same area towards the end of the game. They were playing with putting him over there, but because his shot orientation isn't the same, it doesn't work the same. So they were inhabiting McKinnon's space. And then one would kind of cycle and then carry around, which actually started to put Makar in Mikko's space, which I love because now you're really utilizing that shooting talent, that one-timer, and you're letting your speed and your hands work in the open ice. So that's kind of what I took away. Ezra, is that also what you saw?
Absolutely. I like the movement a lot more. I think some of it is that Nate just doesn't know the system, so he's kind of looking at people are reacting. So I'm a little bit worried that it's just going to go back to normal. But if they like embrace the movement that they showed and they use it intentionally, that's really exciting to me.
Yeah. And go ahead, Bryn.
No, it's the comments that people were actually talking in our chat.
Yeah.
About what?
Just
French
in
fries?
general. The French fries are delicious. Vaguely sober.
Yeah, vaguely sober called me out and said they're already making up for it in the aggregate. That's true, I guess, statistically speaking, right now. That's true. He said, "Me, it's me." Thank you for joining us, Vaguely Sober. We appreciate your attendance and participation. And to all of you folks who are tuned in right now, we have 250 live viewers, not quite the 3,000 live viewers we had on the Mikko Rantanen trade reaction, but we love you all just the same. I'm interested, Brennan, what you saw and what you think of Jack Drury. Are you in cahoots with us and maybe wondering if he's not quite a 3C? Maybe we're getting a little bit of the flash in the pan stuff we saw early from Middlestad as well.
Well, he is on this. He's not as fast as Necas. I'll say that. But I mean, God given today, nobody's as fast as Necas. Not even McKinnon. Because I was watching them both at practice, and I mean, I don't know if it's the altitude today because this was their first skate at altitude with the team, and Drury was having a little bit of a tough time on keeping up with the team. But I mean, I'm impressed if he can put his butt in front of the goalie and keep up with his tipping. I'll take it.
In front of the goalie, not anywhere near enough for the goalie to touch.
Yes.
Oh
in front of the crease, out of the blue. We don't need the crease police.
Can we just have one day we're just gonna have a goalie interference episode where we cross-examine all of the goalie interferences
right now. I got happened.
Oh my God. Well, here's my question on that one in particular. And even Mackenzie Blackwood agrees with me. I heard his quote. Obviously, he's very biased. And so am I. I will say this though. That is not a significant enough touch inside the blue paint, nor is it the reason why he decided to protect the short side and get scored on far side. So, you have to be able to make a judgment call when you look at that and know that goalie interference by the letter of your own rules is not black and white.
Well, and even Dave Jackson was like, this is going to be a decision that's made in Toronto. It's like, okay, well, then they're going to go off of tape. They're going to go off the same tape and same replays that the refs were going off of on the iPad. And yet they made the conclusion that it was goalie interference, and which is complete. I don't want to say it BS, but
we could throw the explicit marker.
No, I'm not going to. But if you get me really ticked off, I will. But it's starting to boil up with this type of situation. But yeah, we've seen Landy further in the crease. We've seen Val further in the crease. We've seen players a lot further in the crease and get away with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I've seen Corey and Evan from the Denver Gazette both say that they seem to be cracking down on it this year. So
I would love to be,
except if you're Scott Wedgwood.
I was going to say, I'd love for the Avs to be on the good side of that. And then I'll agree that they're quote unquote cracking down on it. But yeah, that was a frustrating outcome.
Right.
Totally changes the game. The context of that goal pretty much ended up ending the game for the Avalanche based on what happened next. So, and what's even crazier about that is if you call it the way I think it should have been called, Avs go on a power play, and who knows if they score on it, they could go up and have one goal lead of their own. So you pretty much just dictated the outcome in one moment.
The rate they've been scoring on the power play, they wouldn't have scored.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. That's fair. But it's new. We got a new look.
Back to Drury really quick. I think the one thing that we all have different gripes with the Avs front office, but the one thing I think everybody can pretty much agree on is they're very good at identifying people who are being underused in other teams' lineups that would do better in their system.
That's fair.
And he is a guy who is going to be better in the Avs system. I think he has all the skill to and try hard and grit basically to be an effective bottom six player. But the way the Canes play is very, very structured, very tight, very constrained, and the way the Avs play is a lot looser. I think that will go to his benefit. I've always liked him as a player. I remember watching college games of his because he's Chris Drury's nephew, so I I kind of was keyed in on him because I'm a longtime Avs fan. But I always liked him, and I liked his fit in our system a lot better than I liked his in Carolina. I think he's a guy who the upside is limited, but it is third line, and that's. I think that if he truly hits, McFarland's right.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, he's going to be an effective bottom six player anyway.
Mm-hmm. If he can be, because we've talked about needing a little bit of JT comfort, and we talked about grit per 60. Vaguely sober, bring up your equation for grit per 60 so we can show everyone. But I agree with you there.
They're typing furiously.
In terms of character, Drury's the kind of guy I like the Avs acquiring. And not to beat up on Middlestat, but it's he has all those things that I wish Middlestat had along with what Middlestat does have. And I think it was unreasonable to expect those things because that's just not who Casey's ever been in his career. And I realize that now. I do think, though, that that's where a lot of fans get hung up, is expecting some of that grit in that 2C role. It just has to exist. I mean, that has to be a part of that. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get a little JT style play from Drury. I do love seeing 18 and Drury on an Avalanche jersey.
It's nice, right?
In a game again. If I didn't just put 3 Mikko Rantanen jerseys in the back of my closet, I might buy a Jack Drury jersey. But
that Chris Drury jersey was the only one I had as a kid. So
really, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, and it was me and my friend figured out that it had been 8,282 days between Drury goals.
That's cool.
Because it was March of 2002 against the Red Wings when Chris Drury scored, and then the Red Wing or the Rangers.
Nice. Well, honestly, we don't have a choice but to get excited about Marty Necas and Jack Drury. That's what we're going to do here at the Mile High Hockey Lab. We're going to talk about the trade for years to come. It's always going to have an impact on the future of this franchise. But for now, I think the things are looking up in comparison to how they were last Friday. I realized that I said happy Friday to start today's show, and today's Thursday. So I'm freaking on.
It basically is my Friday. I just had my 8 a.m. class today, and that was it.
Yeah.
So
well, it's my Friday too. So we're just rubbing it
staying
in.
up with that little one, man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, I titled this episode "Say It Ain't So." It's a little play on, of course, the Blink-182 line, "Say It Ain't So, I Will Not Go." And that's kind of where my head was at with Mikko last Friday. But right now, I'm just thinking, carry me home, baby. That's all right. Whatever you got to do, Avs, just do what you got to do. Let's talk a little bit about what might be next on the docket for the Avalanche. We've seen someone, which this is a crazy and stark contrast. Someone like Brandon Saad leaves basically $5 million cash on the table in a buyout so that he can basically be put on waivers, become a free agent, and put his services on the market to become, I guess, he's young enough to be a 2 or 3 year kind of guy. I just don't know if it's something that the Avalanche should entertain. Brennan, you shook your head no. I started the show by saying absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree with you. Of course, I wasn't on at that point since I was picking up my little guy. But
yeah. Are we all in agreement that no Saad?
No Saad.
Jackie?
Are they going to rent a forward?
Because you're thinking, why not? If so?
If they think everyone's going to be healthy, including Nuke in this, then they don't really have room for another forward. They're thin if they get even let's say 2 injuries. But if you're looking at who are you going to have in the short term, how do you fit another forward in? But then that would be my argument for, do you need another forward at the deadline? Do you need to add more to this forward group? I mean, in general, yes. I don't think the depth is good enough, but they're not going to get rid of these guys. So how do you add another forward? So that's my answer. If you're not adding another forward, then I'm fine passing. But if you're just going to go and rent one, then yeah, I'd prefer the free one. So, I mean, the reason why he did this, he doesn't want to play in the AHL, which I don't blame him. So he must know that there's NHL interest. There just wasn't interest at him having another year on his deal, getting paid too much, etc. Exactly. So if he signs something for like $1 million somewhere, for a team that he thinks is going to win, I mean, that's free, right? Like he's going to be better than a lot of these forwards that get moved at the deadline, get moved as rentals. So that's kind of where I'm at. And they love guys that they're familiar with. So we know that it was a few years ago, but we know that he plays a decent depth role in this team. So it's not the worst idea to me, but like I said, how do you fit another forward in? So I doubt they're going to go there.
Re-sign PEB in that case.
No, thank you. I'm good. Also good.
Well, he wasn't an NHL player anymore. So I still think Saad can play at an NHL level. Like I said, there's going to be a lot worse that teams pay assets for at the deadline.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing some names in our chat right now, which, folks, thank you so much for tuning in and participating. George Leninger, sorry if I butchered your last name just now. Is there a chance we get Romanov or Clark? I don't know the likelihood of that. But
too young. We know the Avs are going to need defense. The deadline is not for potential. The deadline's for reputation. This is what I say over and over. At the deadline, you're buying reputation. That's what you're spending assets for. You're getting experience. You hear things like penalty kill. You hear things like face-offs. You're not going to get a young defenseman. They don't want guys. And why? I mean, Romanov played like over 20 minutes. Like, where are the Islanders getting rid of him? But Clark, the Avs are not going to have a use for a guy like Clark. They're going to want like David Savard. That's what they're going to get at the deadline. And they need a top 4 defenseman. They're probably going to need to rent one because I highly doubt they're going to make a hockey deal for one. So that's kind of where they're at.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I know more about what assets the Avs might put on the table than I know about what they might target. I mean, that makes sense. But at the same time, like, there's really no tea leaves to read in terms of who they might acquire. Like, they're typically, I mean, the only one that might have some is Saad based on his experience with the Avalanche and the fact that he's, like you said, Jack, he's likely to be pretty cheap and looking for a contender. I'm not even sure where the Avs sit in terms of their mindset going into the deadline. They pretty much financed an asset just now. So if they are in this business of doing the same at the deadline, there aren't a lot of assets that will be financeable to the extent of actually helping you win a cup. So I don't know. I really don't know who the Avs might have on their board. I just feel like maybe Manson is probably on the block based on his figure and his availability. I wonder
in terms of defenseman.
I don't think they're going to take away from the roster.
Not to lose one. I would I would see an exchange. I'm not saying traded defenseman for.
Manson needs to play as a number 5 in the playoffs. They need a 4, so they don't even have a 4.
Yeah.
I mean, they love Manson too much. At this point, I think they're going to have to give him an extension because they have nothing. I mean, look at all the rotating cast of characters they have had on the bottom pair. Like, they're not getting any traction there. As much as Manson's overpaid, like, can they even afford to not have Manson at this point?
Well, I put out which this doesn't hold any water other than what Avs fans are thinking, but I did put out a poll on January 27th, kind of snidely, and said, who's on the trading block now? And the choices
my answer.
Yeah, the choices were Josh Manson, Miles Wood, Casey Middlestat, and other write-in. Jackie, your write-in is Sam Alinsky.
And no, he might be playing himself out of value, but still, I think.
Well,
the Avs aren't going to bring him, even if it's like a Ben Myers 4th round pick. I still think he's getting moved.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the Avs fans that follow me and voted, there were 437 votes. 47.4% of them, and the majority went to one Casey Middlestat, which brings us back to the whole fit conversation we've had before. Does he hold water to return an asset that could move the needle towards contention for the Avalanche, or is that going to be taking a loss if you move Middlestat at this?
He's playing the way the next month, the way he has been. No.
Well, we're going to get a little break, so he won't be able to play too much. But yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because they need a hockey deal. They need a player in return. If they could pull some miracle and get like Farabee for him, then I'll be on the McFarland's back as a genius. If they could figure something out like that, but are they gonna have with like Yanni Gord instead of him or something like that?
That would be pretty crazy.
Those are both clear losses to me. I don't like either of those deals straight up.
I would do Farabee in a heartbeat.
I like Yanni.
Oh my god!
But it's tough. It has to be a hockey move. The money probably has to be about even.
Just trade for JT and make Detroit retain. Just bring him back.
As much as you're saying that as a joke,
I'm serious. I'm not. I feel the same way about Kadri kind of too. Like if you can get them to retain and you can send something, obviously maybe not to give him the 2C. That's a different thing. Maybe though. I don't know. It's where we're at right now with the Middlestat situation. If it can be viewed as a win, I'll take it. That's how I feel.
I think they probably wouldn't get someone more line productive. That they want him to be.
What was that, Ezra?
We still haven't even seen the line that the team envisions for him to play on more than for like more than 2 games.
What is that at this point?
Right.
At this point, I would say it's Nichushkin and either Druin or Lehkonen, probably Druin.
I know, but don't want the 2C to drive the bus in that line anyway. No matter who's on his
he
wings.
has to play with it's not even a question. He has to stay with Lehkonen. Like that's the only way that he even has any contribution. But I feel like when
Nichushkin, like in a way that I don't know, that Druin Necas McKinnon line was not as effective as Lehkonen in the Druin spot. So I don't know.
I feel like Nichushkin is going to be there on McKinnon's line. You just know how Benner's going to be when he needs to ride guys 25 minutes. Plus, it's probably not going to work out long term to have 2 righties on the line with McKinnon. So, I think.
Right. Check it out, though. Avs would save already $600,000 in a straight up Casey Middlestat for JT Compher. And then you retain Compher signed through 27-28, y'all. So
we need that dry personality back in the locker room.
You absolutely do. You need that guy who doesn't say anything but somehow gets on everyone's nerves.
And wouldn't it be nice to have a 2C where you're like, hey, where's the offensive production?
You know what?
How does that solve anything? I don't see that happening.
You almost got an F-bomb out of me just now. You know what? It's borderline treason what you just did to me.
Hey, I like JT, but that's a third line player right there.
Yeah, well, but that's crazy to me. So JT's a third line center, and so is Jack Drury. That's where we're at.
Jack Drury is the worst of the two, but yeah. It's
okay. Oh, so there's levels to it. I got you. All right.
And somehow if they lose Middlestat and doesn't work with whoever they bring in, do you try Jack Drury at 2C? Hell no, I don't like that idea at all.
But you tried JT, baby.
So, they have Parson in on that line, so I think nothing's a bridge too far.
That's a good
right.
Look at Scott. Scott Wilson says next poll, which JT?
They can't afford Miller. They can't afford Miller, and I've heard that his attitude is not the greatest. As much as I'd like him to come to Colorado.
Is Pedersen more on the block than Miller? Or
I think they both are. We didn't touch on this, but I think that's one part of why the Avs had the extra urgency is because they didn't want Carolina to make a deal with Vancouver.
Yeah,
that's fair. Right. That's fair. I didn't think of it that way because they did say that there was already a deal in the works between Vancouver and Carolina with that in mind. So that's true. It's a very good point. let's see, vaguely sober. He says, no on JT Miller, he's a locker room blight. That's pretty much what you just said, Brennan, correct?
Yep.
And I think I saw an interview where they asked him, because I think his own GM said that he and Pedersen weren't getting along, quote unquote, and he commented the question. So,
well, then you get rid of Miller, not your
I mean, if you didn't have to add much more to Middlestat.
Can you imagine? I'd take Pedersen pretty quick.
The Avalanche, I mean,
They can't afford
big,
Pedersen. I mean, they can't really afford Miller either.
I mean, the Avalanche are already big in locker room culture anyway.
I mean, they're going to play 50 players this year. I think culture is like
didn't stop them from trying on.
We're not there this year.
Rijo.
The Kumbaya era is over, I think.
Yeah, we're seeking our next really tight locker room, which is crazy because like just 2 weeks ago, Megan told us that this one felt tighter than it had since.
I mean, in comparison, I also think that was looking for what you want to see.
But also, like, that was like 5 days before what happened, right? So who knows?
Like your room is tighter because you brought in 2 new goalies. Like, how does that logically?
I think it was just because of like the vibe in the room was probably like, I really want to tell that guy that he sucks at his job right now and I can't. And so now there's more levity and more in the fact that they're performing well.
Like, do they even know who? Do they still wear name tags? Like, do they even know who they're talking to?
So like historically,
60 doesn't win games.
Goalies are pretty quiet, and it sounds like Wedgwood and Blackwood are pretty outspoken, pretty pretty loud. I mean, Ezra, you could probably talk about this too, since you played. I mean, how many of the goalies you played with were pretty quiet and just sat in the corner and did their thing?
Not many. And the ones that were, you're like, when are they bringing a gun to the room? What's going on? You know?
Yeah. And so, I mean, out of like the 5 or 6 goalies that I played with, 2 were like that, and we were like, we got to get them off the team right now.
I'm scared for my life.
They bring a vibe into the room that just it's just not like that. You don't like it.
On my successful teams, the goalies were always a fun part of the leadership group.
Mm-hmm.
And my least successful team I can think of, the goalie slapped me on the back like with his glove mid-game because I was too close to him and he couldn't see. And then when the coach was like, hey, use your voice, he was like, fuck you, and went and sat in the corner. I'm sorry, I broke the swearing. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But it was like now. It was like, dude, what is this? So, and that's kind of what we saw from Georgiev. So when I saw Georgiev hit Malinsky that time, I was like, PTSD.
Yeah, and that's kind of the vibe I was getting from him when I was in the room too. Like
that's the vibe I got after his one decent performance in like a stretch of 40 games where he came out looking like a villain with his hood on all. He looked like Xavier Laflemme on Goon coming into the room. Like,
he always had the hair bun and it's
he did
just
not
like
look pleased here. I hope he finds his peace.
He never had a really good vibe around him, and Francois was always the opposite. Like, he was bubbly and it seemed like he wanted to be there. And
he's a silly side goalie, so he's a little silliness.
And I'm getting the impression that that's what Wedgwood and Blackwood is that they're the ones that are always smiling and you want in the room. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing.
I also think goaltending is such a high pressure job. Like, you have to be so dialed in and focused all the time that if you can't blow off steam and be kind of chill off the ice, you're just a pressure cooker. And that's, I think, what we saw from.
We saw that. Yeah, we saw the explosions where he's throwing sticks, shattering sticks. I think you're 100% correct with that. Like, goalie is one of those positions where, you, even if everyone, including your mom and dad in the arena, know you're not the better goalie, you have to think you are going into the game. Otherwise, I like that Blackwood said it's his job to stop the puck. Congratulations. Yes, that is indeed. Yeah, that is indeed the job. Correct. Well, we've gone on for about 55 minutes, folks. Thank you very much. There's 328 live viewers right now listening to us go on and on about who the Avalanche won't trade for, basically. So let's rehash our bold predictions from, what was it, like a week and a half ago, really, as it turns out, and see how those went. Ezra, you said second line trio of Druin. Oh, no, these are old. These are
No,
old.
that was my last one.
That was it? Okay. Oh, we're just so far removed. You said second
So
line trio, Druin, Middlestat, Lecky would have 2 points in every game. Even in that,
I was so close.
you were close. Yeah, you were very close, but it just did not happen the way you were hoping. Jackie, you said that Shillington's next game would be in Loveland. Brennan, can you confirm that or not?
No, he hasn't even been sent down yet. So
well, we're just gonna keep that one then, Jackie. We're not gonna buzz you yet because it hasn't happened.
I think my one was about
you also
Sam's.
said Sam will score a goal. That did not happen, unfortunately.
I might just let that one ride. I think it's got to happen eventually.
I'm gonna, like I said, I like it. I like it a lot. I said a shutout and a hat trick. That didn't happen. Wonderful, great, so smart of me to be so dumb. Evan, you said that the Avalanche would sweep the road trip. Well, that also didn't happen. Man, someone's just leaning on this wrong.
That one went
today.
down the drain on Friday night. I knew it right away.
But but we have one though, I think, right? Because Parsonen scored a goal, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So our esteemed guest, Megan Angley, she just got a ding. They're going to have to send this one on over to her, as she predicted boldly that Parsonen would have a goal. That was a nice little release he had there too. That's the kind of goal I like as a fan from a guy like Parsonen. Just throw that thing on and see what happens. Yeah, see what happens. Brandon, you had an Eagles sweep. How'd we do?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Henderson showed up.
So we had one ding, and it wasn't even the person who's here. We should be so ashamed of ourselves. But I guess that's why they call them bold predictions. Well, I'm going to run the track, and that's going to give the five of us time to think about this week's version of bold predictions.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I call that bold talk.
All right, let's go ladies first. Jackie, are you ready?
Yeah, like I said, I really do think I'll make the Sam prediction ride.
Okay.
And I'm still holding on to the Shillington one, too.
Okay, let's just leave them both riding on into the next week. Ezra, what about you? What you got for me?
Well, I'm not going to be able to watch the St. Louis or Philadelphia games, so I'm going to say that the next time the Avs lose, I'll be watching.
I like it. Okay, I like that a lot. All right, Brandon, what you got for me?
EJ goal with the Flyers in town on Sunday.
Is he going to play?
I know. Are they going to play?
I hope.
That feels like a game that he would play.
Yeah, I would think that he'd walk up to Tortorella and just be like, I'm playing whether you like me or not.
Yeah,
I'm going to be the seventh or the eighth defenseman. I don't care.
And we know the history of former Avs scoring against the Avs, so I like that one actually.
Unfortunately, we know
and that's a 1:00 game, so Evan will actually be able to watch it.
Nope, I won't be. I'll be on the ski slopes again.
Of course you will.
And this is a complete joke. This is a complete joke, but I mean that means EJ can get home and go to bed at a reasonable time. That old man. So
watch
maybe
yourself.
He will score a goal.
Watch your mouth.
Okay, fine. Evan, what you got for me?
Similar to Ezra, I will not be able to watch either game this weekend at home because duty calls. But I'm not going to say the Avs. I'm not going to copy his, but I am going to go with Marty Necas not scoring 1, not 2, but 3 goals in the next 2 home games. Whether it's 2 and 1, a hat trick in 1, who knows? But I think he's bound to break through, and I think he'll do it in front of Avs faithful, which will be very neat.
Do we get a
So
Drury goal too?
that'd be nice. That'd be nice. I love that one, Evan, because it perfectly leads me to mine, which a part of this trade working for me means that Marty Necas does need to become a superstar. That's just where we're at. That's my opinion. You might think I'm stupid, but that's where I'm at. And with that, what we saw from the Avs when they have two superstars on their top line is we'd get one of those crazy multi-point nights for all of the members of the top line. So I'm going to say before our next show, the top line combines for a whopping 9 points in a game.
They combined for 9 points total over the 2 games, or 9 points one of the games?
One of the games.
Wow. Okay.
Whoa.
Didn't you say like 6 points between like all of the 6 line, the middle 3 or something like that a couple weeks ago?
Yeah. So pretty much
they got like 2
in 3 games.
He got 5.
But here's the thing. The reason why I'm bullish on this is because every point will be combined, right? So even if it's 3 goals, if each guy gets an assist and or a goal, we're still 9 points. You see what I'm doing there? You see what I'm doing? So 9 points combined in one game. And I think it'll be one of those games that kind of starts the dialogue about what Evan referred to as the next generation of Colorado Avalanche players. And I'm excited about that next gen. Evan, that was a good piece that you wrote. If you guys didn't read it, head on over to milehighhockey.com. We also have plenty of reaction to the trade. We have previews. We will have one up tomorrow for tomorrow's game, which is Friday, not Saturday, as I thought it was to begin the show. So that's where we're at. I feel like we're good to go unless the 4 of you have something to touch on that I did not. No?
I have one. It has to do with our little, that little cross state rival over the Rocky Mountains over there.
Yes.
Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah.
The Yetis, yippee,
or the Outlaws, or the Mammoth, or whatever you want to call them.
They're really trying to be Colorado. I think they're down to 3 names. It was Utah Outlaws, Mammoth, and I think the third one was just Hockey Club, keeping Hockey Club.
Is the gosh, I can't remember what
that one's no longer in the running either.
Yeah, but then they like strongly suggested the Outlaws, and it's like, okay, the Outlaws are also taking 2 guys. Are you just trying to take our lacrosse teams?
What is can't they be like do something fun with the bike? Like the Red Wings got a tire in theirs. Like let's do a mountain bike or something. Aren't they all about the outdoors and stuff? Like the Utah Red Sands. Like what are we doing? I don't know. Like all these mascots are taken.
Salt Flats. Utah Salt Flats.
Utah Salt Burns.
Yeah, Salt Burns. Yeah. The Salt Lake Lakes. Why don't they just be the Lakers? What about that? Oh.
Utah watch LA go after them.
The Utah Lakers.
Jazz.
Honestly, at this point, they should just keep Utah Hockey Club. I think I kind of like it. Maybe this is just the soccer fan in me, because like that's all of like their names is like, FC Barcelona or whatever. But like Utah Hockey, I feel like that's not terrible. Like it could be like a new future. You just need the logo and a mascot at that point. But
I liked Washington Football Club more than I liked the Commanders, so I'm with you there.
I think mascots are fun. I think a team like having a team name is more fun. But I hear you.
Let's Google what happens in Utah. I wonder what
hashtag bring back the Yeti.
I almost guarantee you, especially if they keep Utah Hockey Club, that the mascot will be a Yeti. Like 100%.
I do think
I thought that there was a restriction for that though. Like I thought that's why they didn't do Yetis, because of a copyright infringement.
It's the drink.
The Yeti Coolers owns the right to make merchandise with the word Yeti on it. So unless they made an agreement with them, which they weren't able to do, they wouldn't have been able to print Utah Yeti on any like t-shirts, sweatshirts, pom-pom, like anything.
That wouldn't work.
Yeah. But I do think Mammoth is the way they go. And I think that's kind of been made obvious by the options they presented initially. Because if you're voting between Mammoth, Utah HC, and Utah Wasatch, you're probably going to vote for Mammoth, you know. So
we couldn't even say that word.
I feel like
3
that's where it's
minutes
going.
ago. Yeah. The Utah Hikers. Let's do it. Just to get a boot on there. Yeah, the Utah. Yeah, we're not going to say that anyway.
I know exactly which one you're looking at.
We're not going to say that one. Started to
Mhm.
read, didn't think before I was reading, but well, I guess that pretty much does it for us today. We have nothing else to talk about because I think if we just keep making fun of the Utah Hockey Club, we'll definitely run into trouble, and we'll get
We'll be
clipped
here
and
all
put
night.
out. Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate the 4 of you, Ezra, Evan, Brennan, and Jackie. I am Adrian Hernandez. This has been the Mile High Hockey Lab. We appreciate all of you for tuning in. Please give us a follow on your preferred social media platform as well as your preferred podcast platform, and download the episodes when you get there. That always goes a long way for us. And if you're tuned in on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and share with your fellow hockey fans. Until next time, folks, go Avalanche.
Thank you for tuning into the Mile High Hockey Lab.